The culture lives in the minds and hearts of the people doing the daily work. It's not the stuff on the wall. It's not the plaques and the accolades and the rewards. It's the minds and hearts of people coming to work every day with intention.
Welcome back to Work Positive Nation. I'm your host, Dr. Joey Fawcett, coaching you to grow people and profits through a positive work culture. You know, most of us are leaders either in HR or we own our own business. So we have opportunities to influence others. How are you influencing them? Do you listen with empathy with the expectation that your team's opinions influence your own? Do you respect their autonomy, the autonomy of your team members, and follow their intuition? Do you provide them the tools, the resources, and the guidance that they need to achieve their most ambitious dreams? My guest on this episode of the Work Positive Podcast is here to coach all of us leaders into behavior and influence that grows people and profits. So lean in, listen up, and let's love our work together as we grow people and profits on this episode of the Work Positive Podcast. Work Positive Nation, help me welcome to the Work Positive Podcast, the one, the only, an amazing man. You're going to love hearing from him today, Roger Gerard. Roger, thank you so much for being our guest.
Well, thank you for having me. This should be fun today.
Oh, yeah, we're going to have a lot of fun. So every superhero has an origin story. We were talking a little bit about yours, and you and I share something in common. We cut our teeth, shall we say, leading nonprofit organizations. Talk about what you learned about culture leading nonprofits.
Well, before I even go there, let's talk about how I learned leadership as the oldest of 10 kids.
Well, you had a team to lead from the beginning.
I had responsibilities when I was 5 years old for a few other little souls that came into my life through my parents. So, you know, leadership is something that grows on you over time. But yes, some of the first career steps I had in my early career, right after my undergrad work in 1970, was with the Heart Association. And I learned with the Heart Association how to do work that was not task-based. Up until then, and I put myself through college, I was working in a bottling plant making Coca-Cola products, or, you know, I was mopping floors in hospitals and doing all kinds of things that have spending money and paying for my gas and all of that stuff. Mm-hmm. But suddenly I had a professional responsibility within a service organization where I was dealing with doctors and nurses and volunteers in the community and trying to organize committees and boards to do their programming. I spent 4 years with Heart, and the biggest aha in that organization, beyond the programming work that I did, was learning how to do training. I became responsible in Michigan for the cardiopulmonary resuscitation program. Wow. And statewide, we trained thousands of instructors and hundreds of instructor trainers during my work in that area. And really, I learned how to do mass training, large groups. And it was a massive experience for somebody in his early 20s. I went from there to the Cancer Society, and over 4 years there became eventually the director of field services for the entire Metro Detroit area. Again, working with volunteers, doing fundraising and service programming and medical support and doing all kinds of things as an administrator in the Cancer Society's programming there. I also had a 2-year gig as the director of a 3-hospital training consortium, where I was learning how to interact with institutionals who were the executives in these institutions who were very focused on very specific goals and objectives, and I had to meet their requirements. I also had the experience of having a board of directors in that role, where everybody thought they had veto power, and it didn't work very And I learned the trials of an administrator who had no power to accomplish what needed to be accomplished. That was probably the most humbling experience I had as an executive in my early years. I went from there. I left healthcare and went into manufacturing and spent 6 years with two different organizations, one of which is called Sandy Corporation, which was at the time the largest training and consulting agency serving automotives in the Detroit area. And I was taking on projects through Sandy with Ford, General Motors, Burroughs, IBM. I was doing some very interesting work designing leadership programs for executives and managers throughout these large organizations. This was right in the late 70s, early 80s, when America was in recession and the automotive industry was being taken over by foreign products.
Right.
And the automotives here were in trouble and they needed to learn new ways of doing things.
Yeah, that was a real shift in manufacturing for this country. I can remember as a kid gas rationing,
Yes.
Odd days and even days, right, Roger?
Oh yeah, yeah. In Detroit, it was a crisis. It was huge. Chrysler Corporation had huge parking lots full of cars they could not move. They were just paperweights.
So here you are in the midst of doing training.
You guys got to learn something called quality.
Yeah, TQM grew out of that, didn't it?
It did. I was one of the first quality circle facilitators in the state of Michigan as part of that role. And I went to California for the training, and I was teaching quality improvement to large automotive companies, their quality staff in the mid 70s and late to mid 70s, early 80s. So that was huge. I took a position with Gulf and Western after that, and that was at the time the largest conglomerate in the world. Today, their name is Viacom, and what happened is after 3 years doing a lot of leadership training there, I ended up being laid off along with 10,000 other people after the board chair died. Paramount Pictures, one of the subsidiaries, took over the company and they laid off all of their manufacturing-based people. So, but in the middle of that, a former boss invited me to come up to a hospital in northern Michigan, and I looked around, liked what I saw, and became their director of organizational development. This was also at a time when I was finishing my master's in management. And starting my doctoral program in management, and it all worked out. I had the best of both worlds, academic and practical application, to work on my doctorate and get everything done. Wow. I was there for 8 years, became director of human resources and OD and plan ops. I had quite a number of responsibilities there, and then eventually came over to Wisconsin with another system. And have done the same thing there. I was chief learning officer for 23 years in Wisconsin for an organization called ThedaCare. So that's the history.
Yeah,
it's a long resume.
I love origin stories. So the golden thread running through that origin story seems to have culminated, or at least reached an apex, in your book, Lead with Purpose.
Yes. Actually, the Lead with Purpose is my third book. I wrote a book with a guy named John Toussaint, an internal medicine physician. He was our CEO at ThedaCare at the time. And John and I basically wrote a book on applying manufacturing technologies to the healthcare world to improve performance. If you've been engaged, you probably know lean manufacturing methodologies, and that's what we taught in healthcare. And that book went into multiple printings and has been used all over the world by healthcare organizations to change their processes to be more focused on the customer results, the patient's results. I spent 23 years in the chief learning officer position under John in that organization. He was CEO for 10 of those years.
Mhm.
And we accomplished quite a bit in that organization. And about 8 years ago, I was the beneficiary of those works. I had a serious medical issue
Mm.
that came very close to ending my life. And their standard work processes saved my life. So
Wow. That
yeah,
worked
I
out
was very,
personal at that point, didn't it?
very, very proud to know the people who took care of me. So
I understand. Well, talk to us about the Lead with Purpose book and
sure.
how we, in creating positive work cultures, can lead people with purpose towards a positive work culture.
To really zoom in on that, we've got to talk about two other things. One of those things is the previous book that I wrote, Owning the Room. And second, we've got to talk about what culture really means. A lot of people are using the word, it's kind of a throwaway word that becomes a black hole if you don't really define it and understand what's going on.
True.
I wrote a book called Owning the Room that was published in 2012, 2013 during my work at ThedaCare. And that book was all about leadership, the basic principles of leadership that I had learned in the previous 40 years. The idea of that book was you're not leading unless people engage in where you want to go. And that engagement is a significant differentiator.
Mm.
People aren't there to just accommodate your needs as an administrator, as an executive. They're there to practice their professions. And they will either support your leadership or not, depending on how well you organize yourself to make sure their wants and needs are taken care of. That was the whole point of Owning the Room. And I've got 12 chapters on how to navigate that with people, how to manage the responsibilities and accountabilities involved in that. It was a fun way to write, and it was a culmination of conducting retreats for over 15 to 20 years of my career with executives, and a lot of the lessons that came out of those retreats. I learned a lot about what culture means in that process.
Sure.
Culture lives in the minds and hearts of the people doing the daily work. They don't live in the executive suite.
Despite what the executives might think.
They can change the culture, but when they do, they're probably damaging it. The culture lives in the minds and hearts of the people doing the daily work. It's not the stuff on the wall. It's not the plaques and the accolades and the rewards. It's the minds and hearts of people coming to work every day with intention, with the desire to do something that matters, that matters to them and matters to the people that they're to serve. If you've been in human resources for any length of time in the healthcare industry and you're interviewing nurses and doctors and technicians and other specialists, the first thing they're going to tell you when you ask them what they want to do in their career with your organization, I want to help people. I went into this profession because I want to do something good for people. That's what they tell you. Then we treat them like commodities instead of like the professionals that they have presented themselves to be. And when I was writing Owning the Room, I interviewed and did a lot of focus groups and did a lot of surveys. And I was seeing this commoditization of professionals, and it was bugging the hell out of me. It was just not a good thing.
Yeah.
So Lead with Purpose was the follow-up with that. I wrote that book because of the commoditization of professionals. A commodity is a throwaway product. Steel is steel. I don't care who makes it. It's still steel. That's a commodity. Copper is a commodity. All the fine metals are commodities. When you start treating food, corn is a commodity. You can get different brands of corn, but it's corn.
Corn is corn, yeah. But when you treat people as if they were all the same.
That's the problem. When you start treating a nurse as a nurse as a nurse as a nurse, and not recognizing the talents that each unique nurse brings to her professionalism,
Mm.
you're missing everything. You really are. As an inpatient during my treatment, I had some marvelous nurses, and I also had a couple who were technicians. They were scientists,
Yeah.
but they didn't feel like nurses to me.
Mm.
There's a difference.
Mm.
And when you start digging into why that difference exists, well, it's who we select, and then it's how we manage them.
Mm.
That makes the difference in how people present themselves.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, and so the purpose is wrapped up in the mission, and
Building purpose, integrating their purpose with the organization's purpose, and
Mhm.
understanding that the culture is, I'll use the word intangible. You know, a lot of us are five sense. We have five senses. You know, we can touch it, taste it, feel it, see it, hear it.
Mhm.
A lot of people in the technical professions are five sensory people.
Mm.
If they can't touch it, taste it, feel it, see it, hear it, it doesn't exist. The culture doesn't live on that plane.
Mm.
The culture is intuitive. It's a feeling.
Mm.
It's like family. How do you define family, and what are the ingredients of family?
Mhm.
Uh,
And whose
it's
family
like,
are we talking about?
well, yeah, everyone's different, right?
Absolutely.
So you're talking about something that's not as tangible as the daily behaviors of an employee
Mhm.
versus the daily practice of a professional.
Mm. Mm.
That's different.
Yeah, culture is very intangible and living in the hearts and minds of those people who are doing the work. How do we then describe culture and the culture of our company as we seek to attract top talent?
You know, the best way to do that is to tell a story. And I tell a lot of stories in my books. So I'll tell you one right here that comes right out of the pages of one of my books. Uh, I was late for a meeting. I had been asked to participate in a meeting that a couple of execs were having with a whole group of managers in one system I was working in. There were 30 managers in the room, and the two execs that invited me in were at the front of the room trying to lead a conversation. And one of the execs said, you know, does anybody have a problem? Does anybody have a concern that they want to raise here?
Hmm.
Well, you know what happened in the room? Dead silence. Nobody was going to offer a problem. And I walked in just in that moment, and it took me all of about 30 seconds to understand what I was seeing and hearing. There was not a sound in the room.
Mm.
So I waved from the back of the room and I said, "Can I help?" And one of the execs said, "Yeah, thanks God you're here.
Please.
Come on up. Please help me." And what I did is I said, "Okay, you know, we're all here for our own reasons. What I'd like you to do is break up into small groups of about 6 or 7 people each, and I'd like each group to name some of the most important characteristics and aspects of doing work in this organization. What do you love about being here?"
Mm.
And then when you get done with that, spend another 5 minutes about what are the obstacles and impediments for you doing the good work you know how to do.
Mm.
And we're going to have reports in 20 minutes. And when we come back, I want you to be able to report on what you see, what you're seeing in this organization. The room exploded. It was like boom. And when we came back 20 minutes later, they had flip charts, lists, all kinds of things that were really great aspects of living in that culture, but also some of the stupid things that were going on. As managers, they knew they were stupid, but they couldn't do anything about it.
Mm.
And they were pleased as punch to finally have a voice in articulating that. That's where culture lives.
Mm. Mm.
It lives in the minds and hearts of the people doing the work, and it manifests in the relationships and in the conversations. But you have to know how to conduct the conversation.
Mm. 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 So when I'm seeking to invite someone to come and join our culture, how I tell stories like that then as to
Yeah.
how we have conversations and how we roll in this culture.
Yeah, exactly. And there, when I'm hiring people into organizations, I've done quite a bit of that from my HR standpoint.
Hmm.
Um, People don't believe it. You tell them what's going on. You tell them what kind of culture you're trying to create, where it's very robust, it's very open, it's very transparent, we get to say what we see, we get to challenge the authorities when they say stupid things. We get to do that because this is a community. We're building community here. We're not putting people in lines and boxes on org charts, although we have that stuff.
Mm.
But that's not where people live. People live in a more fluid environment. You talk about that when you're hiring professionals, but they never believe you. And about 3 or 4 months later, they come back and say, "Holy mackerel, I had no clue that it was going to be like that."
Yeah.
And some like it and some don't.
Mm. Mm.
So some want to be told what to do, when to do it, where to do it, and how to do it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that tells you that you got to do a better job of screening.
Yeah. So how do you keep the ones that do want to roll with that kind of culture?
How do you keep them? Give them responsibility.
Okay.
Give them something big to do, and make them proud. Make them proud. This it's counterintuitive. Most managers, because of their desire to control, management means to control things. If you go back to the Latin root, it means to handle.
Mm.
So if you understand that they have a control orientation from the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to be very careful about giving anybody a big responsibility. It's counterintuitive if you want to keep somebody, give them something really important to do.
Mm.
If they're professional, they're going to love it. If they're not professional, you made a bad hire decision.
You need to know sooner rather than later, right?
That's right.
Roger Gerard is my guest on this episode of the Work Positive podcast. So we're creating that open, transparent culture. Some people are threatened by that. Other people love it and lean into it. So those persons who love it and lean into it, they're the ones that we give the big projects to and discover their ambitious dreams and help forward that for them personally as well as it fits into the company mission. What are some of the challenges you're seeing in companies today, Roger, for doing that exact thing?
Oh, yeah. There are a number of what I call watershed barriers that leaders have to pay attention to. One is this sense that everything has to be standardized. I'm a lean professional. I understand lean methodology and work and the value of standardizing work. Because once you standardize it, you can begin measuring quality, you can begin measuring productivity, you can really focus people through standardization on the needs of the patient, on the needs of the customer, on the needs of the client of the organization.
Mm-hmm.
But, and this is the but, professionals have a different mindset. Professionals in our highly professional workplace are practicing a profession with the promise of autonomy and the willingness, the ability to exercise discretion.
Mm-hmm.
And if you overstandardize the work, you're taking away discretion.
Mm.
I'm seeing this with physicians. I'm seeing this with nurses. I'm seeing this with educators in the school systems. I'm seeing this with emergency rescue personnel. Wow. They have to comply with somebody's standard protocols, regardless of what they see professionally in the momentary situation they're in. And if they break from protocol because their discretion tells them they should, they become liable for lawsuits and disciplinary action and all kinds of things. We're at kind of a crossroads here of trying to figure out how much standardization is value added and how much standardization gets in the way of professional practice. I think this is a huge issue in professional work today. I have literally spent time with physicians, unfortunately, more than I care to count, who are leaving medical practice in droves because of the overstandardization of medicine.
Mm, mm,
They
mm,
want to be able to practice with some autonomy,
mm.
but they are also anchored to computer systems that when they input the diagnosis, the computer tells them what they have to do.
Wow. Wow. So who's really practicing medicine?
There you go.
That becomes the big question there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of those challenges is where is the joie de vivre of a professional and the creativity and the innovation that can respond to specific situations as opposed to painting with a brush that's so large that we all
Yeah.
get washed under.
Yeah. Think about what the word practice means. Professionals practice their profession. You and I are HR and corporate culture practitioners. That means we go in and we assess, and then we figure out what's going on. And once we figure out what's going on, we come up with a theory about what would make it better, and then we apply that theory in our practice and try to make things work in a way that's more effective for the client. That's what we do.
Mm.
And it's not a perfect science.
But
There
it's
are
an
many
art form as
variables.
much as it is anything.
Bingo. Medicine is the same way.
Mhm.
Education is the same way.
Yeah.
It's not a perfect science. I spent some time when I was writing Lead with Purpose with educators, and one of the educators I talked to, she's an art teacher in a school system. And she said, let me tell you how my day goes. She said, the students walk in the room, and the first thing I have to do is retrieve all the phones and put them in the phone corral. I said, what the hell is a phone corral?
Yeah, really.
Well, she said, if I don't take their phones away from them, they don't focus on the art.
Mm. Mm.
Okay. Then once she's got that under control, then she has to be the disciplinarian in the room. When the kids start joking around and putting paint on one another and doing all kinds of things that you're not supposed to be doing that in art class, okay?
Yeah.
She has to be the disciplinarian. She has to do these teachers. Oh, by the way, she's an artist herself, and she's got art all over the community here. The reality is that she's not able to teach the way she would most like to teach to the individual needs of each student. She has to teach to a teaching protocol.
Mm.
They give her a set of protocols that she has to follow in her teaching regimen.
Mm. Mm.
So there's standardization there. There's distraction from the non-focused disciplinary activities that she has to be accountable for.
Mm.
How much time she really spends teaching in every 45-minute hour is questionable.
And getting to be less and less, right?
Yeah.
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 The challenges between standardization, which leads us to certain outcomes, versus the nature of each individual situation is in a constant tug of war. Yeah. That's amazing. Work Positive Nation, I know you're going to want to continue the conversation with Roger Gerard. In the show notes, we have a link to the book that we've mentioned several times, Lead with Purpose. Also, there's the link to rogergerard.com, and there's his LinkedIn profile where you can send messages with him and set up a way to have a call with Roger. Roger, when we go to rogergerard.com, what are we going to find there?
You're going to find my bio and all the stuffs that go with that. You're going to find links that go to LinkedIn, to each of my books on Amazon. You'll find all of that. In addition, I capture all of my blogs that I put out on LinkedIn. I capture them on my website, and I've one of my avocations or passions is photography. So you'll see a lot of my photos out there on the blog page. You'll see a questionnaire where you can do a quick quiz on your own leadership style and approach. Mm-hmm. So you'll see all of that as part of the journey there.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I understand you've got 5 promises for Work Positive Nation, and then a couple of things that we can do starting today to create a positive work culture right where we are.
Yeah, nothing happens until something happens, you know?
That's
It's
right.
one of those things where if as a leader, you have to have a bias for getting things done.
Mm,
And so I've evolved in my work 5 promises that I think every leader needs to make if they want to create an engaged culture. I'll
mm,
go over them quickly one at a time. And after the 5 promises, there are 2 things that I challenge every leader to do. So, promise number 1, I will listen to you with respect.
mm,
I'll take your input seriously when I do. I may not agree with you, and I'll tell you why, but I will listen with respect. Every professional wants to be listened to.
mm,
If they're not being listened to, they're not being valued.
mm, mm.
That's
Yeah.
promise number 2. I'll help you learn and grow as a professional. Every professional wants to know that they can learn and grow in their profession. That's why they practice their profession. Remember, they're practicing.
Mm,
You're never finished.
mm.
You're never done. They want to know their leadership supports that growth.
Yeah.
Number 3, I will help you be wildly successful in your profession.
Mm.
People want to know that the boss is in their court.
Yeah, it's like need him on my side or her on my side, right?
Yeah, they want to know that the boss wants them to be successful and is willing to invest that time and energy in arraying the resources and the context for that success. People have to have the tools of the trade. They have to have what they need to get things done.
Mm,
Number 4, I'll make sure you are compensated competitively.
mm,
This is a big deal. In professional life, a lot of professionals do not feel compensated well.
mm,
If you want to keep highly effective and highly engaged people, you have to compensate them at least competitively.
mm.
Now, a lot of HR people will tell you, well, it's got to be within 5% of the 50% copper ratio. Competitively means you better be at 60 to 65% copper ratio because the data you're using is at least a year old.
Mm. Yeah, and
So
it's
you
moved
you
forward.
better move it up
Mm,
and quit playing games with people. You know what it is.
mm, mm,
But I've seen HR professionals over and over again use data as their framework for setting their compensation systems, and they're already behind, and they wonder why nobody wants to work for them.
mm,
5th promise, I will have your back when things go south. Notice I didn't say if.
mhm.
Things
Yeah,
are
it's
going to
happening.
go south.
Yeah,
People
they
will
do.
mistakes, things won't turn out the way you want them to turn out. People want to know they're not going to be blamed and shamed.
Mm, mm.
Blame and shame is one of the biggest obstacles to an open culture that you can ever have. It's poisonous. And
It really is.
you need to make a promise that there will be no blame and shame here,
Mm,
period.
right.
So those are the 5 promises that I believe if you as a leader make those 5 promises, they're not going to want to work anywhere else. Why would they?
Mhm.
You're trying to make them wildly successful in their own professional practice.
Exactly. What are the
Yeah,
2 actions we can take, Roger?
2 actions: go and see, and then go and do. By go and see, I mean get out of your freaking office, go spend some time with people, get to know who they are, who their kids are, where they work, and what it feels like to them to work there. And then once you go there and look around, find ways, small ways or big ways, find ways to give them what they need to make their jobs easier and more effective.
Mm,
Go and see, go and do.
mm,
When you do that, they know you're listening and they know who you are, eyeball to eyeball. That's a personal relationship.
mm.
Go and see, go and do.
I love it. Roger Gerard's been my guest on this episode of the Work Positive Podcast. Go to rogergerard.com or to his LinkedIn profile, both of which are in the show notes there for you below. Pick up a copy of his book, Lead with Purpose. You can go right to Amazon and pick that up from the link that's in the show notes. Thank you so much, Roger, for sharing your time and your wisdom with us in Work Positive Nation today. I appreciate you, buddy.
It was all fun. It was all fun. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Work Positive Podcast. Please share this podcast with your friends who are HR and small business leaders so they can do one thing today to create a positive work culture that increases productivity and profits. I'd like to give you a free Work Positive course just for listening. It's called Something to Talk About, and it's transformed the work conversations of so many people all over the world. Get your free copy when you go to workpositive.today/something to talk about, and you can start transforming your conversations today. Remember, it pays to work positive.